Hello, everyone, and welcome back for another episode of Hot Drop. I'm Daniel, your host, and let's get into it. This marks episode 6 of Hot Drop, and I wanted to thank everyone for sticking with me so far. This is the first podcast slash YouTube series I've ever done, and I just wanted to say that I appreciate the feedback I've gotten. I'm still trying to figure out what exactly I want this to be. Is it a podcast? Is it a video series? Should it be more audio heavy? Should it be more video heavy? Is it more scripted, or is it off the cuff? I'm sort of combining all of those into a blend right now. Some of the things that I've talked about so far are very much scripted, where I've actually sat down and written up an entire a show script and read through it from start to finish. This one right now, I'm speaking off the cuff, and I'm trying to lean more towards that because I've realized that podcasting and just creating a video series takes a lot of time and effort. I wanted to say that if you have any feedback for me, if you think this is good, if you think this is bad, if you think I should lean more towards audio or more towards visual, definitely send me your feedback. You can reach me at hotdroppodcast@gmail.com. That's one word. And I really look forward to hearing the comments that you have and hearing about any feedback that you have for me to improve on. If you don't know, I'm already on SoundCloud, and you can find me just by searching Hot Drop Podcast on SoundCloud. So if you prefer an audio version of the show, you can find it there. I'm also leaning towards creating a iTunes podcast channel for this show as well. So that involves creating a website and creating an RSS feed. This is something that I'm still working on. Might take me a little bit of time to set up, but personally, I get all of my podcasts from iTunes, so I wanted to make sure that I was accessible there as well. Now that those house cleaning items are taken care of, let's jump right into the episode. So this week is all about the new patch. We have a monthly patch that just came out with a ton of new features, a ton of performance updates, and a bunch of bug fixes as well. So this one was a big one. I noticed right away upon booting up the game that performance was a lot smoother. I think I owe that. I think we owe that to the first couple bullets in these patch notes, which are improved network performance by reducing the amount of data being sent from the server to the client, and reduced network lag by preventing a large amount of data being sent from the server to the client simultaneously. So this single-handedly is the best thing about this update, I think. Performance is just better across the board. Anything from jumping into a car to opening doors to picking up items, everything is just so much smoother. And these are the kind of updates that we really need to make this game ready for release. These are the kind of things that people will notice and need to have on those lower spec machines to be able to play this game well. I'm playing on a pretty decent machine myself. I do have a 1080 and a nice i5, but this is the kind of stuff that we need to get into the game to make sure that this game is still accessible to players who are playing on laptops or are playing on machines that are a couple years old. Performance is single-handedly the biggest priority, I think, and I'm really glad to see that they're paying attention to that and making that a priority for them as well. Specifically on the client side, they fixed a bunch of things and improved a lot of the performance issues that we were seeing. So frame drop when other characters were around was fixed by optimizing nearby characters, fixed an issue of frame drop when vehicles were around by optimizing vehicles, optimized the starting plane and care package airplanes, improved rendering performance of weapons from far off, made improvements to the weapon animations, optimized many in-game effects including the red zone bombing effect, improved many UI features, improved features regarding rainy weather. So these things are just small features, small bullet points that are just general performance enhancements that will definitely go a long way in terms of making the game smoother and having everyone have a better experience overall. One thing I definitely noticed were the red zones. So the red zones were definitely a lot more smoother. There's a little bit less audio clipping around those, which is good to see because every time I would be in the middle of a red zone, your speakers would just go crazy and staticky and fuzzy, and you'd hear the sound clipping because of all the explosion sounds happening. I'm glad to see that they took care of that a little bit. I'm still hearing it a little bit, but they definitely have improved on that. I didn't really notice a lot of these other things, such as the weapon animation changes. They just say improvements here. It would be nice to know if there was actually a specific thing that they improved about them. I'm kind of a sucker for really cool animations, especially around reloads and stuff like that. I didn't really notice anything that was different here, but improvements under client performance just tells me that they made them a little bit smoother and made it so that the performance of the animation is a little bit better. So all of these little one-liners sort of add up to make for smoother performance overall, and I'm really glad to see that they are continuing to work on this, and I look forward to more of this in the future because this game still has a while to go. It's definitely not completely updated yet, completely optimized yet, and I know that some people that I'm friends with can't actually play this game yet because they're working with older hardware and don't necessarily have the funds to update their machines yet. So bringing in these performance optimizations will get more people playing this game, and that's what they really need to make sure that this game stays popular for years to come. Next, let's move on to the new items and gameplay changes that they added. So the first is, of course, the Groza, and I've talked about this in previous episodes. This is the AR that's chambered in 7.6.2 and can only be found in care packages. So I've been playing a bit since this new update came out, and I've only actually found this gun once, so I don't really have a good opinion on it yet. It seems like it shoots extremely fast, and it also seems very powerful, but again, I don't really have enough experience with it to be able to say for sure how I feel about it. I think I'll have more opinions coming up in upcoming episodes where I talk about this gun a little more, but it's interesting to see that they actually added the AR to a crate because this is the first assault rifle that you can actually find in the crates, if you don't count the M249, which is sort of a light machine gun. They also added the P18C, which is the Glock 18, and this is a pistol chambered for 9mm ammo, and it also fires full auto. This pistol is awesome. It's essentially like having an SMG in the slot of a pistol. With an extended mag, it can hold 25 rounds, and it has the full auto capabilities to really demolish someone up close. It shoots extremely fast, and while it does seem a bit rarer than the other pistols, I've picked it up every single time because I think it's really that valuable to have as a sidearm. It's really effective when you have something like a sniper rifle, assault rifle, and now you can still have that SMG-like third weapon in your arsenal. So when you get up to those close ranges and you know there's going to be a guy right around the corner, you might switch to a fully auto pistol that you have to eliminate them right away, rather than sticking with a burst fire or slash single fire M16 or trying to go full auto on a assault rifle, because obviously it's not going to shoot nearly as fast as this pistol does. Also, the attachments for pistols seem to be a lot more common. So things like extended mags and those suppressors are a lot easier to find to me. Coupled with the fact that you can now put a red dot on a pistol makes this an extremely valuable gun in my opinion. I'm going to pick this pistol up every single time I see it, and because the 9mm ammo is also extremely common, it just makes for a no-brainer. It doesn't really make sense to pick up any other pistol than this one. I look forward to using this gun a little bit more. I haven't had a full test of it yet, but so far so good. This gun seems great, and I'm really excited that they added it in the game as a full auto option. Another thing that I'll get to in regard to pistols in the gameplay changes is that they pull out a lot quicker. You can actually switch to a pistol from any other weapon a lot faster, and this is what I've been looking for a while. It really makes pistols viable options when you run out of ammo, so instead of reloading your weapon, you might switch to your sidearm, and having that 25 round fully auto pistol as your sidearm is just crazy. I think they've balanced it pretty well by having it be a little bit lower in terms of damage output, but the fact that you can just hold so many rounds and the fact that it just shoots so quickly really makes it a very effective weapon, and I'm excited to use it moving forward. Let's get into some other weapon changes. So the Vector and the UMP can now shoot in burst mode. I have mixed feelings on this one. So the Vector, I am all for this change. The Vector only holds 13 rounds, it shoots ridiculously fast, and you just spray through those bullets in the matter of seconds. Probably like in the matter of second, actually. So the fact that it can shoot burst fire to me tells me that this possibly gives it a little more range and makes it a little bit easier to control in those medium range battles where maybe you don't have an assault rifle yet to be able to switch to engage at a longer range. So the fact that the Vector has burst fire, I'm all about. The fact that the UMP has burst fire, I don't really see myself using this. In fact, the very first time I tried to use the UMP, I had it on burst fire thinking that I switched to auto and it got me killed. So I'm really not a fan of this, honestly, right off the bat. I think the UMP is really effective in single fire because it doesn't have a ton of damage drop off and you can use it in medium ranges pretty well. But also the UMP to me has always been that sidearm that I switch to for very close engagements where I'm always going to be using full auto. So I don't really see room for burst here, but the fact they added it just gives you more options. It's definitely not a negative. I just think that personally, I will always stick to ump either single or auto, and vector probably not single anymore, but I might switch to burst as my go-to when I don't want to use fully auto. And plus, I might use the burst when I don't yet have that extended mag to bring it up to 25 rounds yet. Two more small changes to the ump were that the recoil rate was increased and the spawn rate was decreased, which I'm okay with these changes. The recoil for the ump was just ridiculously non-existent, which made that gun really awesome, and I'm glad to see that they've made it a little more balanced. The fact that it spawns a little bit less, I haven't really seen it be any less to me personally. I've had no trouble finding the ump pretty much anywhere, so it must have really been spawning a lot for them to be able to decrease this, but I haven't really seen any difference here. One more weapon change that I wanted to mention before we move on to items and vehicles and gameplay changes is that the VSS no longer spawns in crate packages, which I am 100% all about. I absolutely hated how the fact that I would battle my way to a crate only to find that there's one crappy little VSS and 60 rounds of 9mm in the crate just to greet me and say, hey man, good job fighting, here's your garbage loot. So glad that that is now only spawning in the world, and I have a better chance of finding something better, such as a Groza or a sniper rifle. So, all about that change. In addition, at a low probability, you can now possibly find AR silencers, sniper rifle silencers, and 4x scopes in care packages, which is great, definitely. AR silencers are, in my opinion, one of the best items in the game as far as attachments, and same with silencers for sniper rifles. So 4x scopes, a little bit easier to find in the world, but the fact that they're in care packages, I'm fine with because many games I've played and not been able to find one. So all of these are good changes. I have no issues at all with these. I think these were great additions to care packages. Moving on to some gameplay changes. So these are things that really affect the core gameplay in the game. I just said game about 4 times. You can now pick up items while moving. So the interaction animation will not force you to stop anymore, but make you walk slowly. This is great. Right now, I've learned to adapt to the really crappy pickup animation that was in place before by hitting tab and dragging things into my inventory manually. This was something that I was hoping would change, and it looks like they found a good happy medium in terms of instead of having the player stop to pick it up, you can still run and grab it, but you will slow down a little bit. And obviously, you're not super accurate when you're trying to run and grab that gun early game before anyone else grabs it. But this is a pretty good fix. I've started using the F key to pick up things a little bit more now, rather than just tabbing out and dragging things over. So this is definitely a good change. The other thing that they've added, which is especially important around looting, is that you can now interact with doors, items, or vehicles while reloading. So reloads used to cancel, reloads will be canceled with such interactions now. Before, you had to wait for the reload to finish in order to do that interaction. So that would cause a problem when you were trying to reload and also run away from someone and open a door and shut the door behind you. You wouldn't be able to actually open the door because you'd be stuck in a reload animation, which was super annoying and has definitely gotten me killed before in the past. So I'm glad to see that they dealt with that. The problem with this is only that you have to make sure that you actually finished your reload after you've opened that door, because there were a few times where I caught myself thinking that the game was being glitchy and not actually reloading my gun, but the fact was that I was actually picking up items and canceling the reload, not realizing that that's what actually was happening. So just something to keep an eye on when you're running around trying to reload, that you actually reload your bullets and didn't actually just pick up something else. And I said actually about 5 times there too. The screen will now gradually desaturate based on remaining health during the revive state. So this is just a cool visual effect when you're downed. As your health slowly deteriorates, you will see a fade to black sort of animation there. So that's just kind of a cool thing. And a nice cool effect, which I don't actually see mentioned in the notes, is that when you get revived, your screen sort of resaturates, sort of bright and vivid, just to indicate that you're back and you're now alive again. Adjusted kill count system in duo and squad mode. So here's what I was talking about during the last episode that got implemented in this update. So you will get assists now, and if you want more information on that, definitely check out episode 5. But basically, if you knock someone down, if someone else finishes them off, they will get the assist, but you will actually get the kill. So that's cool that they've actually introduced that into the game so quickly after they announced it during that dev stream. Adjusted the F key interaction to prioritize the revive state. This is a great fix. I love this fix. So this was when you had a buddy that got downed and there was loot all around them. You would constantly hit F to try to pick up your player, revive your player, but instead you would be picking up ammo and backpacks and stuff like that. Seriously irritating. You'd have to tell your teammate, dude, move over a little bit to the right. Like, I need to make sure I can get you and not accidentally pick up this ammo. Glad to see that they fixed and they prioritized the revive action instead of picking up items. Adjusted the play area to spawn more evenly within a circle so that the play area does not appear in the center so frequently. This is a sweet change and something that I actually noticed playing a lot yesterday. So the circle would actually be centered on different areas of the map rather than more just right in the center. I found this made for more interesting conclusions to games because I was seeing the circles just being in more spread out different areas, more of the corners of the map. Um, I wasn't seeing as many circles just ending up right in the middle of the play area, so that's cool to see. Definitely interested in more variety. One of the coolest games that I've ever finished and won was at the beach towns, which are at the southwest of the map, the sort of the southwest bridge that goes to the military base. That cluster of houses there. The game actually ended right there, which was really cool to see because a lot of the times you're usually in an area where it's just a forest and hills and countryside and there's no cover and everyone's standing behind trees and trying to be invisible by laying down in the grass. So it was pretty cool to see the game actually end on the beach in front of the town, within that town on the beach there. So to me, this sort of means that there's more variety in terms of where the circle ends. So if you think about it, at the beginning you have one giant big circle in the middle of the map, usually, and then smaller circles and smaller circles and smaller circles. So typically the circles before this update would sort of zoom in on the center of that one giant circle. So making it so those smaller circles are more at the edges of the big circle, if that makes sense, makes for games that end more off to the sides of the map. I hope that makes sense. And that's how I'm interpreting this. And I might be totally wrong, but that's how I interpret this as not necessarily having endings being in the center of the map all the time. There's a few more small things here, but that is the majority of the good and interesting gameplay changes. So let's move on to the world changes. And there are two new weather settings, which we already know about, the sunset and the clear skies. So the clear skies seems to be a pretty high probability of being in the match that you're in. So right now we have the partly cloudy, and now we have this new clear skies weather. And this seems to be happening roughly 50% of the time. It was pretty often that I would see the clear skies in my games, but the sunset seems to be a lot slimmer as far as the probability of your map being at sunset. The sunset, it looks really cool. They did a really great job with it. The lighting is very warm and red. Everything just looks different, and it looks pretty cool. So I think it's a very nice addition to add a little bit more variety to your games. Second, they added destructible cabins, and PlayerUnknown actually tweeted about this earlier last week, but the destructible cabins to me seem a little out of place on the map since nothing else is destructible like this. I assume they're sort of placing the groundwork for additional structures that can be broken down, but these sort of look just like outposts that are not completely finished yet, very similar to the shacks that already exist in the map. And to show you that you can actually break these versus the unbreakable existing shacks, they've made those shacks be concrete. So you can quickly tell by looking at them, besides the fact that they look totally different, that the small shacks are now concrete and can't be broken down. So it's just adding another place to hide in the map, sort of when your circle is closing down and maybe you desperately need a hiding spot. you would go for these. But I think the destructible cabins right now sort of look out of place, and they're not really a cabin at all. So I don't know. It's just interesting to see that they are experimenting with destructible environments, and I'm looking forward to what they add in the future here. There's a new animation for when a character is at the speed of taking fall damage. I didn't see this anywhere so far in my games last night, but it's just something to be aware of, that maybe you know now that you're going to take fall damage because your character does this different animation. Moving on to items and vehicles, there were a few changes that I want to point out that were really important and something to definitely be aware of as you're playing. So the first is that adjusted vehicles to face random directions at spawn. Everyone knows who's been playing this game for, I don't know, more than 5 hours, can tell you that every time a vehicle spawns, it faces east. Now this is completely gone, so you need to be aware every time you pull up into a new house or a new looting location that vehicles can be facing any direction now. And so there's no way of immediately knowing whether or not someone has been there inside that vehicle and moved it. I think this was a good change because now there's a little more unpredictability around whether or not someone has been to that looting location or has been inside that car, and therefore you're a little bit more on edge. Speaking of vehicles, they also adjusted the spawn time of vehicles and speedboats so that they can be seen from further away. This was something I just talked about in episode 5, and I'm really glad to see this. And I actually saw this in action yesterday when I was playing with my squad. So when we were parachuting down, it seemed to me that it was a lot easier to spot cars from further away as you're in your parachute. So this is a really great change. They increased the spawn rate of the Uzi, which doesn't matter to me because I'll never pick it up, and they also adjusted the loot balance of certain items. And I wish they said what that means because I don't know which items they're talking about, but they do mention that the level 1 helmet was being spawned at a much higher rate than the level 1 vest, and they adjusted this so that both items will be spawned at a similar rate now. Moving on to UI really quick, one thing I wanted to mention here was that they removed the death marks of teammates after a certain period of time or a distance away from the place of death. This was that skull and crossbones icon that would appear just in your field of view where your teammate died. So I'm really glad that they've gotten rid of that because it would obscure your vision and would serve no purpose at all, honestly, because you can still see where your teammate died on your minimap. As far as bug fixes, the only interesting thing here is that they fixed an issue where the voice chat volume blasted momentarily after getting into an airplane. So this is when everyone would seem to be screaming in your ears as soon as you spawned into the plane, and this is no longer a thing. This was of course mitigated by just muting your voice chat, and that's what I do now because I just talk to my squad in Discord and don't have voice chat active, but it's just a nice fix overall. So that about wraps it up for episode 6 of Hot Drop, which covered the monthly update. This was a huge update and there was a lot of information here. You probably know all of these things already because this episode is a couple days behind. But I just wanted to share my opinions on some of these things because I think that's what this podcast is all about. You're probably not going to be coming to this podcast to find all of the latest and greatest updates, but you will find a lot of information about how I feel about these changes and how I think that they can improve the game going forward. This episode was definitely off the cuff. I did not write a script for this one, you can probably tell that. I just felt it was going to take way too long to mention every single bullet and every single thought and feeling that I had about that bullet. So if you have any feedback for me, definitely shoot me an email, like I said, at hotdroppodcast@gmail.com, and I'm definitely interested to see what you guys have to say. I have another gameplay analysis planned for episodes 7 or 8, so stay tuned for that. But until then, here's your bug of the week.